Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Progress Through Partnerships session. My name is Chuck Hemingway. I'm with the Copyright Clearance Center. We had the privilege of organizing this particular event. And I wanted to take a minute to preemptively thank the panelists, Lisa Hinchliffe, Sara Rouhi, Sybille Geisenheyner, and Mathew Willmott, who contributed a lot of time to make it possible. And I'd also like to thank you for the gift of your time. We realize there are many, many things happening all at the same time. So it's good to have you here. For those of you at home, we have a heaving, standing room only crowd. I think Scott Delman got the last seat in the house. Welcome, Scott. Before I turn it over to our first speaker, Lisa Hinchliff, we wanted to let you know that this folks interested in this topic may also want to come to the Francis Marion in the morning at 9:45. There'll be another session, the read through of 6 common transformative deals, which might be a great follow-up to this particular meeting. So today we're going to hear a little bit about approaches to help stakeholders get what they need from the transformative agreement landscape, also touching in on some technology solutions that have spawned out of those efforts. And so we have a limited amount of time, so I'll stop flapping my gums and invite Lisa to the stand to give us her part of the presentation. Thanks very much.
Let's see. Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for being here today. My name is Lisa Janke Hinchliff. I'm a professor at the University Library at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and also affiliate faculty in the School of Information Sciences and the Center for Global Studies. I come to today's panel as a participant in, an observer of, an analyst of scholarly communications and particularly transformative agreements. I am a chef in the scholarly kitchen, and I've written quite a bit about transformative agreements of all types, including read and publish, publish and read, pure publish, and subscribe to open, and many other approaches. I imagine it goes without saying, but let me go ahead and say that these are my views and should not be taken as representing the position of my library or my university. My role today is to provide framing remarks in advance of the presentations by the other speakers on the specifics of the models that they are actually working on. So reflecting today on today's theme of paving a new path, I found myself deep into the literature on road pavements. Yes, I know. It's actually quite fascinating, and paving a path turns out to be a very apt metaphor because we hardly think about the roads that we drive upon, and yet they require intensive planning and attention to detail in order for us to ignore the details. They are incredibly complex in design and construction and must take account of a wide range of conditions and context: geology, climate, weather, planned usage, which itself includes predicting changing human behaviors, preferences, diversions, community planning, etc. The road built for Siberia is not the one built for the Galapagos, which is not the road built for South Carolina, at least not if you want that road to be functional, safe, and reliable for the future. We take roads, those pavements, for granted. Well, except when they fail. Road pavements are actually designed in layers. You may have observed this when encountering road construction. These layers serve the following objectives, at least according to the 59-page Federal Highway Administration Manual on Geotechnical Aspects of Pavements I found myself reading. These are structural capacity, providing a strong structure to support traffic loads. Ride quality, providing smooth wearing surface. Safety, skid-resistant surface. Durability, preventing premature deterioration because of environmental factors. I think these map well to the considerations I see as we think about transformative agreements, both in the narrow sense of read and publish deals, but also the broader sense of transforming the financial models of scholarly publishing and access. How are we attending to questions of capacity to support the demand for publication outlets? What of the quality of the author and reader experiences, as well as that of editors, peer reviewers, etc.? What safeguards are in place to prevent fraud, misinformation, and the like in order to secure and support the safety of the scholarly communication system, the credibility and trustworthiness of science and scholarship? Are the transformative paths sustainable over time? Are they durable? So to return to the notion of layers, in pavement, these are generally conceptualized as subgrade, subbase, base, and surface. Most drivers are focused on the surface. Will this take me where I want to go without damaging my vehicle or injuring my occupants? Similarly, most scholars likely care little of the details of these contracts, policies, financial frameworks that underlie the scholarly publishing system. But as librarians and publishers, we have to attend to the full stack of layers and how they interact and build upon each other. Now, I won't attempt a full listing today of all the considerations, but I'd like to suggest at least a few that I think are central to the current transformational moment and its demands for managing policies, timelines, financial models, and reporting requirements. First, I suggest we need more attention to system thinking and perspectives. It is too easy to focus on a part of the scholarly publishing system and imagine that if we can just make one change, the impacts will be contained to that change. Instead, we must lean into the challenge of thinking about the complete system and how it may respond. The complexities of the system mean that there are unintended and perhaps even undesirable consequences. They may have also been unexpected, though I think that you will find that there is usually a Cassandra in history if you look even just a little bit. What is the theory of impact of a change, and has it been comprehensively considered? Related to this big picture is, ironically perhaps, the nitty-gritty details, the logistics, exactly what must be done by whom at which point in the publishing process for any agreement. Increasingly, I am hearing librarians and publishers alike reflecting on how they hadn't realized the level of detailed attention and process adjustments these agreements were going to require. We have well-honed automated systems to authenticate people as authorized readers, but almost all authentication and authorization of people as authors covered by transformative agreements is currently manual and depends on authors themselves understanding more about the technological workflows of publishing than we have ever asked readers to understand about the technologies of access. I would also like to recommend increased attention to drivers of change. There is a great number and variety in the drivers of change, many of which are, if not opposed to each other, at least not well aligned. Analysis of these is necessary if we are going to build the kind of partnerships we are going to discuss today. It is easy to be carried along by the rhetoric, but calling something sustainable or equitable doesn't make it actually sustainable or equitable, and such labels may not bear up under scrutiny. It isn't that I want us to regulate marketing copy, but I do want us to look beyond labels to understanding whether the drivers of a given change and the proposed change itself are reflective of our priorities, regardless of what those priorities are or whether I might personally agree with them. Because all the research on successful partnerships says that collaboration is effective when it is based on shared goals and understandings. So I'm looking forward today to hearing from the other speakers on today's panel about how they are working to build the layers of pavement that will serve as the quality scholarly communications infrastructure system that is safe and durable and meets the capacity demands of the scholars of today and equally important of tomorrow. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you virtually, and I'm very excited to be a part of this discussion. Here at the University of California, we're doing our best, guided by our faculty and other university stakeholders, to drive the transition to open access for research published by UC-affiliated authors. We feel we've had a good round of success so far, with a total of 10 agreements that we call transformative agreements. And now about a third of the articles published by UC corresponding authors are eligible to be made open access under one of these agreements. As we've grown this program from our first agreement with Cambridge University Press in 2019 to our current volume, a focus on technological frameworks to support these types of agreements has become more and more critical to us. This is particularly true in our case, where a part of our strategy for financial stability is to engage authors in the payment process through what we've termed the multi-payer model. This is something that we see as potentially sustainable for large research-intensive institutions in North America. Under this model, at a very basic level, authors who accept the open access default are shown an OA publishing fee, often discounted from the list price. The library pays the first $1,000 of this fee, and then the author is asked if they have research funds available to pay the remainder. If they do, then they pay the remainder using those funds, and if the author does not have funds available, the library pays the remainder. In this way, we're supporting every author, particularly those that don't have funds available to pay for open access publishing. But we're also asking each author to engage with the economics of publishing and to contribute funds if they're able. This model creates a couple of requirements in the workflow, which are not in more traditional read and publish agreements, including the ability to present these questions to authors and to move them through the workflow appropriately depending on their answers, and the ability to split payments between the library and the author and aggregate costs accordingly. So as you might imagine, having 10 different agreements means the potential for 10 different implementations of the multi-payer workflow, 10 different sets of data reports, 10 different publisher systems to interact with for affiliation approval, and so on. Clearly, this is not scalable. Without developing some ability to consolidate processes across publishers, the work required to administer these agreements from the institution's perspective will become untenable, and the author experience will be inconsistent from publisher to publisher. Fortunately, services are starting to be developed which can help us extend these agreements more widely and grow our program with the confidence that we can support it. Two services in particular, CCC's RightsLink platform and the Open Access Switchboard, have already started to provide a repurposable infrastructure which allows us to more easily ramp up our agreements. These two systems have somewhat different targets. RightsLink has developed a strategy to implement the multi-payer model, which I just described, for participating publishers, helping to alleviate the technological challenges that publishers might face in implementing this model, and also making a more consistent experience for authors. 3 of our agreements now use RightsLink for at least a part of their implementation. And then the OA Switchboard facilitates efficient communication between the publisher and institution, in particular around confirming author affiliations and reporting publication and financial data. The ability to consolidate these interaction points will greatly improve our efficiency in managing these agreements and will also drastically lessen the technological ask of potential publisher partners. 5 of the publishers that we have agreements with are launch customers or founding partners of the OA Switchboard, which is just getting started on implementation this year. So from the publisher perspective, I see all of this as being particularly beneficial for smaller publishers, putting them on a more equal footing with the Elseviers and Springer Natures in this arena. That's not to take anything away from Elsevier or Springer Nature, both of whom we in California have had positive experiences with in collaborating to tailor their in-house systems for our implementation. But not every publisher has the resources available to do that work, and we at CDL don't have the resources available to engage on that level with every publisher. Extensible, repurposable, and easily implementable shared infrastructure make this possible for all publishers in a way it otherwise wouldn't be. And that's also good for librarians and the academy in general, who benefit from a diverse ecosystem of publishers and who often want to continue supporting their scholarly societies and nonprofit publishers in particular. This is therefore a key piece to global transition to open access. For us in the libraries, and particularly here at the California Digital Library, focusing on shared infrastructure helps us in several ways that are critical to the success of our efforts. First, as we expand our portfolio of agreements and get new agreements up and running, calling on these existing systems to support our workflows means devoting far fewer resources to custom one-off implementations allowing us to stretch our own efforts and limited bandwidth further. Second, as we oversee our transformative agreements, using a single system to administer or gather data and reporting from multiple agreements makes our work much more efficient. Then, as we discuss potential agreements with publishers, the ability to refer to existing infrastructure that they can implement makes the prospect of an agreement much more real and much less daunting for them. And finally, as we advocate for other institutions to join our push for global access to research, particularly those that we think may benefit from the multi-payer model, the presence of existing infrastructure lowers the activation energy needed to help institutions engage in agreements like these. Thanks very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion to follow.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me today. It's great being part of such a great panel together with those marvelous colleagues, and to review the road behind and the possible path ahead of transformative agreements. I'm very much looking forward to the live discussion later in the session, and I hope technology will allow me to participate. I will give just a short overview on where the American Chemical Society is in regards of transformative agreements, such as read and publish. But is this road alone stable enough to really move us forward to fundamentally change the system? With an example, I would like to show the complexity and the limits of transformative agreements. But let's look at the success first. ACS strongly prolongs the path with read and publish. Authors from institutions in the UK and Germany, Netherlands, Finland, Hungary, US, just to name a few, are now able to publish via an ACS read and publish agreement in their well-known hybrid and in some parts as well in gold journals. ACS has also developed a clear, transparent model to support this transition. Offers are adapted to respective individual situations of the facilities or the institutions. A big challenge are, of course, situations where the output of an institution does not really correlate in any way with the financial possibilities. In such situations, many compromises have to be made on both sides. But when these compromises are found, transformative agreements have an astonishing effect on the open access output, which can be seen very well in the graph on the right side. In most cases, we see an uptake of over 90% on open access. For us, of course, this is not least due to the workflows that we have developed together with CCC, among others. These workflows are intuitive for the author and transparent and easy to control for the institutions. Feedback we received on a regular basis, and attempts are made to implement them in order to further optimize these workflows. But is this enough? To illustrate the complexity, I went to the Horizon 2020 dashboard. The data of the dashboard is based on dimensions. Horizon 2020 is a scientific funding program from the European Union and is a signatory of Coalition S, actually. Unlike some national funders, it is in the nature of things that the grantees are spread across various institutions and countries. I have to say, I have not cleaned up the data, but even so, I think you can clearly see where the challenge lies. The output is split over 40,000 institutions in over 240 countries or regions. At the rate we walk the path right now, closing up deals with consortia or national-wide read and publish agreements per year, it will take us years to succeed. So I will close my short talk with the following. We need an additional path to achieve the goal of transformation. And that can, in my opinion, only lie in direct agreements with funders. This was really just a rush through to that, and I'm now very much looking forward for any comments or questions and the discussion later on.
Good afternoon. My name is Sara Rouhi. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at PLOS, and I'm delighted to give you an update on PLOS's experimentation with non-APC models, particularly as relates to infrastructure. So I'm going to focus mostly on our community action publishing program, and happy to take questions when we wrap up. So the first question to answer is, what is community action publishing? To recap, the purpose of PLOS Community Action Publishing is to help demonstrate that highly selective publishing can be made open access without exorbitantly high APCs, or indeed any APCs. We do this in a couple of ways, and the pieces that go down the slide here are going to speak to specific infrastructure that you would need to make this a success. So the first is that we're public about our costs and our margins. This is not something I'm super familiar with many other publishers doing. We think it's imperative for any kind of collective model to have this level of transparency. That said, it does require quite a bit of internal work to come to those numbers in a way that makes sense and then to be able to share them. We additionally had to determine the universe of institutions that we'd want to participate. And that requires a lot of heavy lifting around institutional disambiguation, as well as identifying corresponding and contributing authors. We then assign tiers based on publishing history, and any institution that participates basically gets unlimited publishing for the duration in exchange for that one annual fee. And we've made, again, all of our fees transparent. You'll see it's a very wide range from tier 12 or READ institutions that have a very low likelihood of ever publishing, all the way to research-intensive institutions that publish frequently in these titles. Research for Life countries are automatically members of the all three collectives, and that's got some infrastructure related to it in that your systems need to be able to recognize institutional affiliations as well as country location to trigger the Research for Life inclusivity. And then when the community, each community for each journal meets its revenue target, any additional revenue is redistributed to members at renewal. And that is actually going to be some of the most interesting pieces for us to figure out because of how to do that and how to do that in a way that's transparent. So that is going to come in the next 18 months or so. There are a number of things that are unique about the model that have made it a success, but really speak to needing infrastructure to support it. So the first is just a new approach to cost recovery and transparency and the resulting redistribution of excess revenue. The approach to author contributions, the model looks at both corresponding and contributing author affiliation. That exponentially increases your institutional disambiguation and author disambiguation challenges, which is significant. The approach to transparency with our partners really resulted in kind of an iterative process that was incredibly valuable to the success of the model, but it's obviously more work as you have more institutions that are providing feedback. And then lastly, one of the important innovations here is that their sustainability is a core component of the model, thanks to how it's been structured to have fail-safes. And one such fail-safe is this particular model has two revenue streams. So the community participants are paying an annual fee, but the individual authors from institutions that are not participants pay a non-member fee. So in the spirit of a collective action effort, there are sticks for participating and there are carrots for participating and there are sticks for not participating. And the non-member fees are very much intended to encourage institutional members. They are not intended to penalize authors. So what you need to sort of do this kind of work really speaks to the quality of your system. So these are kind of the innovations that we brought to the model. And this is what we kind of needed to make it work. So this question of redistribution of excess revenue, obviously that has big implications for accounting and finance, how the revenue is recognized, how it impacts our annual audit, which is critical, and then thinking through how the redistribution is going to work when we re-tier everyone when the 3-year initial pilot term is up. Additionally, the question around institutional disambiguation is going to impact every part of the business, from authors submitting all the way through to authors closing a transaction with us, either as a community member or not. So a lot of your systems internally have to facilitate both the institutional disambiguation through tools like Roar or Ringgold, but also the author name disambiguation. Lastly, to do these models, or not second to last, you need to be able to communicate how they work. And there's a lot of complexity in how the models are built. Our proposal documents, for example, really walk through line by line how this work was done. But then you also need to be able to roll up that explanation into something concise and quick for institutions and consortia that don't have infinite time. So you need a dedicated sales support infrastructure that can fluently explain the essentials of the models without bogging folks down in unnecessarily detail, understanding that that detail is there for folks who want absolute transparency in how the model works. And then lastly, the multiple sort of revenue streams definitely are a benefit in that depending on whether the model works or not, no one is left in the lurch. But at the same time, there's a lot on the accounting side that has to be taken into account to make this kind of model make sense. So really that's it. In summation, these new models work, but the infrastructure required for a seamless both author experience and library experience is significant. And thanks to solutions in the case of PLOS like Editorial Manager and Copyright Clearance Center's RightsLink platform, we are absolutely getting there, but there's still much work to do. Thank you.
All right. I'm positive that with that unique set of views that really kind of cut across the market, there are going to be some questions from the audience. So feel free to put them in through Pathable, or if you're in the room, shout them out and we'll repeat them for folks that are not here in the room. Best question wins a Charleston Chew. No coincidence.
Can I ask the audience a question?
Sure you can.
Can you narrate to the people listening?
I can.
Sarah's asking a question to the audience. That was weird. So how many folks here are from publishers or vendors of some kind? How many are from libraries? How many are from somewhere else? Cool. Of the libraries, how many of you are, sorry, for the first show of hands of publishers, it was about half the room. For the second show of hands, it was about a little less than half the room. Half, yeah. And then a smattering of other. So of the folks that are publishers, how many are actively in the process of like building either new models or working on transformational agreements? So not every publisher, but a good chunk. Close. And then of the libraries in the room, how many of you are in the process of either, let me ask multiple questions. How many of you are in the process of holistically reevaluating your collection development strategy to determine how you want to play in this space? So okay. Oh, cool. Good. How many are sort of taking this more opportunistically as renewals happen, as budget frees up? So it's another small handful. And then is anyone really actively pursuing transformative agreements sort of their own initiative from our library partners? Ish. So I got a couple.
1, 2, 3. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Thank you for indulging me.
Right, brilliant. To follow that up, I'm curious, what's the breaking point for libraries and mid to small publishers? Are the libraries out there finding it hard to have, meaningful conversations with publishers below a certain weight class? We know from the publisher side, which is where CCC lives, we hear a lot of concern from smaller publishers of having to queue up to work with bigger buyers in the market. Anybody struggling with trying to find a way forward with smalls and mediums? No? Okay. So,
could jump in and answer, at least from our perspective at the University of California. We're trying really hard to work with a diversity of publishers, which includes publishers of all sizes. So, I mean, the one that's been in the news, right, is probably our agreement with Elsevier, that is the largest publisher. But we also have agreements with publishers that are publishing in the low double digits of articles, which for a consortia of 10 campuses is a very low publishing volume. So we're really committed to figuring out strategies that we can move forward with all types of publishers, and that's really one of the key pieces that I hope folks can take away from this effort to build shared infrastructure, is that shared infrastructure can really help us in that quest to keep a diversity of publishers in the conversation, because those smaller publishers often don't have the same resources to be able to implement these types of models, and the shared infrastructure can help them also get to that point.
brilliant.
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry, can I go in? I just wanted to add, I mean, from a publisher's perspective, and a society publisher's perspective, and I think we are one of the larger societies, I can already say that it's sometimes even for us hard to queue up as well, and to get to the negotiation table. So it's really that I think the negotiations itself with just the three bigger commercial publishers takes up so much room already that it's really sometimes hard to get seen and heard as well. So it starts early, that queuing.
so if I can just add a slightly broader perspective, as somebody who sort of watches this space, I think there's a couple interesting things that we could observe about patterns. So I think there's even a fundamental first question, whether a given library, and if they aren't, they're probably not in the room today, is actually interested in pursuing a transformative agreement. Driving library dollars into open access publishing may not actually be appropriate for every library. Many institutions are actually read institutions. And so the opportunity of the transformative agreements that are taking place in a larger way is that an increasing amount of the content for which they are subscribers is now open. And so many of those libraries are actually reevaluating their subscriptions, not to convert them to transformative agreements, but instead that these transformative agreements are creating a change in what they actually need to subscribe to in order to fulfill their mission as a library that meets the needs of a reading institution. So that's the first thing. The other thing is there's been in the last year a real attempt to look, and I think this is partially in Sarah's presentation as well. Some transformative agreements, librarians are questioning their kind of impact on the equity in the system, because if we move everything to an APC-based model, that we have things like Research for Life and Hinari and that sort of thing for reading access. When we have Sci-Hub, which, has pirated everything. So technically everything's available. There's no Sci-Hub if you want to get published in a certain journal. You can certainly get published somewhere, but, so we just are seeing a bunch of dynamics here as libraries also reevaluate on the equity question. And in fact, I heard recently a presentation from librarians who were presented with a transformative agreement that was a zero cost increase for them. And they turned down the publishing part of it because they said they did not want to support the APC model for publishing, and that most transformative agreements that are in the read and publish side of things are based on this notion of the APC as opposed to some of the models that Sarah was talking about. And so they did not want any part of that APC model. And so they turned down that opportunity. So I think there's some rumblings in the force, if you will, about whether libraries are, even if they are a published institution, whether they believe that the transformative agreement, especially sort of our canonical one of the read and publish, as opposed to the broader notion, is the right mechanism for this, which is, I think, why we are seeing uptake with something like the Community Action Plan, or that's not what it's called. It's CAP. cap, whatever that stands for. But I still think we're going to see a lot of questions about sort of the value delivered to a particular institution when you're investing a particular institution's dollars. And that rebalancing in the system of who is paying for publishing versus who is paying for reading is just, there's a lot of things that impact it in sudden and unexpected ways at different points in time, not the least of which is, of course, the fact that we are currently in a time where libraries are taking significant budget cuts in many cases. And it's not a place like mine, the University of Illinois, or big research universities, although I say that and then I think about the fact that University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is taking a $5 million cut in their collections budget over the next 2 years. And so there's a lot of money leaving the system right now as well.
I have a rejoinder, but we have so many questions now on like 3 different platforms, so I'm getting a little overwhelmed. So I'm gonna pull up the first one. Yeah, let's do a different one. So Susan Kendall's asking, and this may be for you, is for you, Chuck. I sort of know the answer to this, but I don't want to try. Is how RightsLink is able to keep track of who is eligible at a university to take advantage of an agreement?
It's unicorns mostly and other kinds of magic. Actually, it's really a set of publisher-driven rules. So publishers basically lodge all of their agreements in the system so that when authors turn up and they're carrying the right identifiers, whether they're
Closer to the mic.
Damn it. Hi. So publishers basically create profiles for their partners in RightsLink so that when manuscripts come through that are flagged with the proper identifiers, funder identifiers, institutional identifiers, that they're then offered the right kinds of treatments, whatever that may be. Could be special pricing, could be prepaid, R&P type resources available for them, even as far as things that are blind to them. They can actually have transactions happen on their behalf and not have to be present in it. They just get notified after the fact. But it really boils down to the old warhorse thing you hear at these conferences, which is data. Sara knows this all too well, right? It's all the magic really happens in a real strong manuscript process, making sure that folks take the time to affiliate, and when they don't, someone else does. It's really all down to data.
Can I interject with a rant? It doesn't have to be publishers versus libraries. It can be solutions providers versus solutions providers. If EM doesn't talk to RightsLink, none of this matters, right? If your accounting software can't speak to Salesforce, which then has to talk to a submissions platform, all of this stuff doesn't work. So, we have been begging a certain submissions platform, which I just named, to really integrate Ringgold in a robust way so we can get authors to correctly identify, understanding. It won't have all the nuance that Lisa might like in her, professional affiliation on all her documents, but we can roll it up to that one institution that we know at the end of the day, if Lisa affiliates with that, she will not see a fee. And if she doesn't, she will. Like that stuff is what breaks you at the end of the day. And so if there are any solutions providers out there, please listen to us when we say that we need this, because it all falls down on tiny things like that are not sexy, but make or break. Another question that came up, if I may, from Pathable. Some publishers are, maybe this is for Matt, some publishers are investing in OA dashboards to support their transformative agreements. Do you find that there is cost flexibility in their transformative agreements if you opt to use alternative systems? Oh God, I lost it. The page refreshed.
I think you got most.
To centralize management of their read and publishes. In other words, can you get discounts if you don't use their individual dashboards?
Right, that's a good question.
Bad no to that.
Yeah, in general, you're pretty, when you have an agreement with a publisher, you're pretty well beholden to the technology that they have available for implementation. So the ones with the local dashboards and things, that's generally what you'll need to use.
Yes, I can just echo that. And every individualization is a cost driver, because everything what is running through a standardized process is minimizing the cost And if you start to find individual solutions, it's driving it.
That's brilliant. So quick time check. We're just about to spill over. So thanks for everyone submitting questions. They came in through multiple channels, which is still absolutely flummoxing for me, but we had some great questions and we appreciate the participation here in the room. And a round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much. And thanks again.